there is what you know, and watching very closely the situation, and the question you raise is a real one. Let me just say one word about what is happening here in New York with our draft resolution. So, in English, right? It's okay. Our priority now is to open a new phase in engaging all members of the Security Council on our draft resolution. As you know, the draft has been circulated to the 15 members of the Council on Saturday night, so we didn't waste time. We will start the discussion later today in good faith, in a good spirit with the 15 members. The goal of this resolution is clear. It is for the Security Council to restart a collective action to deal with the chemical dossier, to protect the civilian populations, and to work toward a political settlement of the Syrian crisis.
Let's clarify real quick on that question, because obviously chemical weapons seems to be a policy right now, but what's the difference in how you kill people? I mean, if it's a chemical weapon, is it different than he's slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people in that country, most of which have not been done with a chemical weapon. Sure. Why is chemical weapons the line?
Well, I get that point also, but chemical weapons are different. They're indiscriminate. They do not target combatant members of the military. They kill innocent women and children, and we saw that in the horrifying videos that we saw last week.
As you know, there is already a set of Security Council resolutions covering the key aspects of the crisis, chemical, humanitarian, political, that have not been implemented. Our draft resolution proposes to cover these three dimensions of the crisis: chemical, humanitarian, political. This is the first time that this is the case, that a draft resolution covers the three dossiers, the three domains. And in our views, it is essential to get out of the Syrian stalemate, to have this global approach, so to speak. So this is our roadmap. This is what we want to do. We will work very hard, in good faith, in good spirit, to listen to everybody in order to try to move ahead with our draft resolution, because we believe that really now is the time to, again, move forward toward an inclusive political settlement of the crisis.
I actually wanted to jump off of that, and Walid, ask you, because the U.S. position developed very quickly here, because a couple weeks ago we heard that we were pulling troops out.
That's right. A few weeks ago, the president was mentioning the possibility that he will move those troops out very quickly. Then there was a change that he accepted that the troops will stay for a while until we achieve the goals against ISIS and other goals as well. Then suddenly the Assad regime used chemical weapons, prompting us to react. This is a red line. Anytime this regime, other regimes will use it, we will have to act at some point. But my question is, regarding our forces in the northeast of Syria, I have an expectation or projection that the Iranians and Hezbollah and Assad and other militias are now targeting that area, meaning they want to respond to us, but they cannot do it directly. The Russians are not going to clash directly with the United States in that part of the world or any other parts because of the nuclear issue. But in eastern Syria, we need to be a little bit more proactive, making sure that the Iranians won't have the upper hand.
So how quickly do you want to move toward a vote on that? Are those expert-level negotiations?
Today?
Yeah, are the negotiations today at expert level?
Yes.
And how quickly are you wanting to move toward a vote?
This is a very good question. There is no artificial time frame for the discussions. Again, what we want to do is to engage into a real, serious, productive negotiation. We want a genuine and constructive negotiation process with all Security Council members. It cannot happen overnight. And we will to engage with each and every one of them and collectively to have hopefully fruitful, in-depth, serious discussions.
Do you have a regular reaction from Russia?
We will see in the coming hours, and certainly with the first meeting that we'll have today, what is the Russian attitude. But of course we want to engage with them seriously, in good faith, and in a good spirit.
Joining us now is Ohio Congressman and Air Force veteran Representative Bill Johnson. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here this morning.
Before we get to if another one is imminent, what do you think of what happened on Friday night?
Well, I think it was absolutely appropriate. You know, we went to great lengths to make sure that civilians were not hurt, that we didn't cross the line and attack any Russian assets, and it had the support of our NATO allies as well as our ally Israel. So we sent the strong message that President Obama is not in the White House anymore, that red lines that prohibit the use of weapons of mass destruction, they're not going to be tolerated.
We want to hear your reaction on another piece of video from Nikki Haley, but first, real quick, yes or no, do you think we strike again?
I'm not sure. You know, this was Secretary Mattis made it very clear. We degraded their ability to produce chemical weapons. Let's see what the response is now. If they're smart, they'll back away from this kind of activity.
And as I was just referencing, we do want to hear a little more from Nikki Haley on possibly more Russia sanctions. Let's go ahead and listen to this. Russian sanctions will be coming down. Secretary Mnuchin will be announcing those on Monday if he hasn't already, and they will go directly to any sort of companies that were dealing with equipment related to Assad and chemical weapons use. Your reaction?
I think sanctions are absolutely appropriate at this point. You've got several elements of power. You've got the military element, the economic element. You've got diplomacy. And these sanctions are very, very appropriate. And I wouldn't be surprised to see even more. You know, Russia's economy is teetering at this point. They've overstretched their limits in the Ukraine, and they've really overstretched their limits in Syria as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if President Trump's not taking a play out of the Reagan book. You know, bring the Russians into compliance and make them good actors in the community of nations by simply outperforming them, outsmarting them, and economic reasons.
So why aren't they able to get in?
Ask them.
Well, how come one of your deputy ministers said that they weren't being blocked because there was no clearance from the UN security?
We need to check it because it's very strange for us to ask clearance from UN security. So I think it's sort of misinterpretation. Sorry, I need to go.
Russia provided security for those, Russia and Syria.
Sure, Russia and Syria provided.
Thanks so much,
States, France, and Britain say the strikes crippled Syria's ability to produce chemical weapons. President Donald Trump's subsequent tweet, "Mission accomplished," was countered by critics who say the one-time raid won't make a difference. U.S. officials on Sunday defended the action.
We have a responsibility as a world to attack and stop what Syria is doing. And so the United States, with her allies, went after 3 sites. These are pinprick targets, 3 targeted sites that we know were housing and testing chemical weapons.
The White House press secretary said the United States and its allies accomplished exactly what they set out to do. There were similar reactions in other parts of the Arab world. Some opposition parties in Europe also questioned the legality of the mission.
I remain very circumspect on the fact that France has intervened without a precise UN mandate. This could have consequences on the voice of France and on the weight it represents on the international scene.
The Trump administration says U.S. troops will stay in Syria until the threat of Islamic State, Iran, and chemical weapons is removed. But officials have made it clear that removing Assad from power is not a goal. Zlatica Hope, VOA News, Washington. They went out to destroy critical chemical weapons infrastructure in Syria, and they did exactly that. And they also sent a strong message to Syria, to Russia, to Iran, that when this president has a red line, he will enforce it. The White House also rejected criticism that Trump may not have a clear policy on the U.S. role in Syria. He wants to defeat ISIS. He has talked about this relentlessly. We are almost there. The spokesperson said that Trump also wants to contain the influence of Iran in the region, and its ally Russia denied that poisonous gases were used in the government attack on a rebel-held area outside Damascus earlier this month. In a meeting Sunday with a Russian delegation, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad called the missile attack an act of aggression.